General Brown, welcome and congratulations on your nomination, and thank you for your decades of service to our nation. And Mrs. Brown, thank you for your decades of service as well. There's been a lot of conversation this morning about munitions. I want to continue that conversation because I view it as one of the most vital challenges the department faces today. Obviously, this is in the context of our support for Ukraine and its defense of its own territory against Russia's unprovoked war of aggression. General Brown, has the Ukraine war caused the challenge to our munitions and defense industrial base, or has it exposed some of the fragility and cracks in the defense industrial base?
Senator, I would say it has exposed, and the reason I say that, I'll just based on experience. When I was Air Commodity Commander for the United States Central Command during the Defeat ISIS campaign, we had some similar conversations. Back in 2017-ish time frame, when North Korea was very active, we did some reviews and it highlighted it then. Now it's highlighting it even more so. And it's the aspect of why it's important for us to not only invest in the platforms, but again, invest in the munitions that they have enough stockpile, particularly the advanced munitions that are most effective. Those are the things that we have to continue to do, not only from the department, but also as we work with Congress to highlight those needs.
Yeah, I agree with that the war in Ukraine has exposed those cracks in the fragility in our defense industrial base, not caused it. Of course, those concerns are part of the broader context of China and the threat that it poses to Taiwan and our ability to deter Communist China from going for the jugular in Taiwan. One important question here is to think about the kinds of munitions we've been providing to Ukraine and the kinds of munitions we provide to Taiwan, or that we might provide or might use ourselves in the future. Speaking broadly, are the munitions used in Ukraine versus those that might be used in Taiwan, are those completely the same, totally different, or somewhere in the middle but closer to one pole or the other?
I'd say they're somewhat different just based on the environment that they're operating in. But there are some, some that are similar. I think the key part for us is to ensure, and this is one reason why in this year's budget submission, we had multi-year procurement. And the multi-year procurement was to actually make sure that we actually not only had, the munitions we're going to buy, but also, the facilities as well as the workforce and the supply chain. And that's the value of having these multi-years. So you set some predictability for the defense and industrial base, so it's not an up and down with each budget cycle, and that'll help us better, help them better plan and ensure we have the capability not only for ourselves, but as we also think about our allies and partners as well.
Well, I'm glad you raised multi-year procurement, because I think that that's been something that could help address this problem. It's not a silver bullet, but could help address it. To be clear, multi-year procurement, though, isn't necessarily about saving money for the department, but about giving predictability and certainty to the companies across America that assemble or make components for these munitions. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's about building capacity. It's about buying down risk in the future. You can't not put a price tag on risk. Ideally you do want to save money, but in the big scheme of things, it's actually, you got to actually get the facilities built first. That's going to be some capital investment that you can then, when you start to produce, that's where you may get some of the savings in the future.
Because if you're sitting at the head not of the United States military, as you will have confirmed, but rather, say, at the head of a major defense contractor like Lockheed or Northrop, or even one of their subcontractors who, say, makes parts for the rocket motors or the explosives or the steel, those are major capital-intensive investments if you're going to expand a line or even add a new line. And obviously, you'd be concerned if you can't have multi-year certainty that that line is going to be at full capacity. Is that right?
It's not only the line and the capacity, it's also the workforce to ensure they're going to be available, and the subcontractors to support the major aspects that you need to pull together.
I think you and the department have convinced the authorizers on this point. I think maybe the appropriators still need some convincing to do. I'm confident our chairman, who also sits on the Appropriations Committee, can carry your points to the Appropriations Committee. One final question I want to raise, since it's been in the news, is what's sometimes been colloquially called as 155s over the last few days. That's a 155 millimeter artillery shell. That's one of the most basic shells that we use or that our Western partners use. We've spent about $1.5 billion on production of 155 shells over the last 6 years, or I'm sorry, over the last 6 months, to get to the point to quintuple our production rates. I've looked at the inventory numbers, which in combination with donations from other allies and partners don't appear to be approaching concerning levels yet. We've also heard on this committee from several leaders that 155 production rates right now are sustainable. Do you think that we are currently low on 155 millimeter artillery shells?
Senator, I have not looked at it that closely. I'd have to come back to you with maybe a question for the record on that one.
Okay. Could you do that, please? And if confirmed, also, if you conclude that we are not in fact low, could you perhaps, as your role of the principal military advisor to the President, share the news with him? Because I think he may have misspoke somewhat in an interview recently. Thank you, General Brown.